Today's guest has evolved through the years through pure channeling and connecting to her higher self guidance and multidimensional aspects. The activation of light language has strengthened her understanding of the universe as she translates her dialects and light codes into English. After a series of traumas, she was led to her sole purpose and mission as an intuitive healer, soul mentor, and spiritual guide. Let's welcome today's guest, Nicola Light. Welcome, Nicola.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Adam. It's a pleasure that I got invited onto the show. Yes, I keep fading in and out of the universe, as you can see, as I blend with it,
I see
coming
that.
back into oneness.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because as we spoke just a few seconds before, uh, everybody is on a journey, and there's certain instances in life where certain things will take place in order to shift us into a new level of ascension or consciousness. Uh, and your journey is no different. You've had experiences which have shifted you into the place you are now after going through specific events. Many of the guests I have near-death experiences at a young age, and then they have
Mhm.
one later on in life. They don't recall the younger one when they were younger until they have the near-death experience when they're older and they realize the correlation. Uh,
Mhm.
or we go through specific types of traumas in our lives that push our soul or expand our soul into a new level of or dimension, so to speak.
Mhm.
Um, and your work of light language, light codes, and is so
Mm.
inspiring to see the activity and the ability to be open and surrender to the universe to receive this information is truly inspiring. Maybe you could bring us back on your personal journey a little bit
Mm.
to where this all started and how it began and the traumas that you maybe have gone through or when it
Mm.
began.
Yeah, it was really funny actually because the journey itself, when you sort of look back as a story, it almost feels like you're going into a bit of a past life regression. And I sort of talk about this, that we're in the same body, but we're a completely different person to what we could have ever imagined ourselves to have been. And knowing that was the old Nicola is not this Nicola sitting here in front of you in this now moment. And so that sort of transition, and when you sort of look back at the old story of how did I get to where I'm at now, seems a little bit strange actually. So sort of revisiting it, it almost like looks like dust off the old book off the library and then sort of go into it.
Right.
But I will answer the question there, of course, because you asked me a question. So it was through the deconstruction of my family unit, and without going into too much personal detail, but my nan was really sort of a very sort of dear soul to me, and she passed while I was on holiday in Mexico. And so that was, I knew that there was going to be a passing, and she did actually say before I went on holiday with my family, "Don't go, Nicola." And then she was like, "Oh no, no, you must go." But then she did pass when I was away. And a couple of months after that, I lost contact through a massive family trauma with my mother and father. And so I lost sort of three key people in that time that just sparked me into a questioning of who am I? What's this life all about? If, I lost my nan, my mum and dad is sort of, don't want to speak to me, and all the massive, horrific things that went on there that affected the whole family. Um, that I started to question, so what was it all about? I wasn't overly happy in my relationship, and I'd never really been. And it was, so I find out later that it was very much a karmic relationship that I sort of deconstructed quite nicely now. Um, and during that time, I sort of, sort of wanted to sort of search in, well, what is it that I can do to find out these answers? So meditation was my first port of call. Having sort of connected with some beautiful people at a spiritualist church, and I was no mean sort of any way of being religious, and not to say that religion isn't a way of sort of sparking an inspiration within yourself, but it did. And because it was sort of held with heart, the people that I connected with were absolutely beautiful souls, and they sort of nurtured me whilst I was going through my traumatic days of emotions and and um and then I had sort of quite a lot of stuff going on with my my daughter at the time, and it was just so much to sort of deal with. Then gradually, sort of the synchronous of the universe sort of brought different people into my lives. You know, I had some wonderful people that I connected with to work through my psychic abilities, my mediumship, starting to open up my heart, starting to sort of like look far beyond the four walls that we might stare at. Um, and then I was sort of getting information and starting to get what I would call downloads. And at the time, I'd be laying in bed in a meditation and be thinking, I'm getting a download. Now, how did I know that I was getting a download? I don't know what a download was or is. And I just thought, I'm getting a download. What is happening? Um, and then through that journey of then starting opening up to Reiki, I then started being aware of energy flow. The universe sort of like it brought in letting go of my physical body as I went into real depths of letting go through the meditative states. And there was sort of one particular time that I remember, which happened over a course of about 2 or 3 nights. I can't remember if it was 3, but I say 2, let's say 2, that my body literally just switched off and my body breathed itself. It showed me what to do. And I was like, what's going on? But all the time I was witnessing, and I think if anybody's listening to any of this, is just to witness which comes in, which might be a little bit strange, just like the shoulder keeps going on this blue screen at the back. It's just witnessing that the shoulder is disappearing. Now, is that disappearing because it's disappearing, or is it an illusion? You know, this whole reality is an illusion, but it's what do we align to see and perceive it to be. So the more that we can witness with what is being presented, the more that we can then attune to what is new and far beyond our greater knowing, which is belief systems and programming of our minds. So it's really been an amazing journey. And then you was talking about light language, and during my awareness or starting to do a little practice with my friends and family and just the odd people that would come my way, I started to bring in light codes, which is, as you say, is a pure channel state. And then through the codes, I was coding myself to align myself into higher levels of consciousness. And it was a natural process. I didn't understand even what I was doing in the beginning. And many people in my path wasn't particularly liking what I was doing. They thought it was all a little bit, a bit dark. And because they didn't understand it from their mind perception. But then I've then pushed through that by, looking at the emotion that was connected to it, pushed through, aligning to high levels of consciousness, downloading as a result of releasing density in my field, upgrading myself. This is a new understanding. This is the new way. And then gradually throughout the years, I really sort of understand what it is that I'm doing. At the beginning, I didn't have a clue. Didn't have a clue. I was like, what am I doing? Am I going mad? So my journey's been, it's been beautiful, absolutely beautiful, and I love every single moment of it.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
you've taken your path, and rather than become a victim of circumstances
Mm,
and turn yourself into a victim and lower your energy field, you've done the opposite and used it as an impetus for your own personal growth. Um, it's so interesting because you speak about 2012 as being a entry point of light workers entering into the universe or being awoken. Now, naturally, the amount of light work is incomparably less than would be the general population. But yes,
mhm,
but yet the smaller population of the people who have this capacity do have the ability to shift the consciousness of the universal energies or the consciousness itself. It's interesting
mm,
because in 2011, 2012, I myself was experiencing the same type of uh, breakthrough, I would say, uh,
mhm.
where I was a phys ed teacher, and then all of a sudden I had Lyme disease, and then through that I realized the suffering. I felt a little, a little physical, emotional stuff from that, but
Mm,
something pushed me through working with a healer, and then I expanded myself, and then that was the point when you mentioned 2012, that's when I felt somewhat in that time frame as well. And
yeah,
maybe you could share a little bit
yeah.
about that.
Yeah, I've literally just come off of a mentoring session with a lady actually, which I got some information come through with some codes that we got in, because I was apologizing to Adam that I was actually running a little bit late for the actual call. And I was like, oh no. But this information that came through was actually very, very relevant to that question, which was about the increments of energy that comes in from high levels of consciousness that enables you to awaken within you all that you are. Okay, so we'll unpack that a little bit. So basically what happens is that along your journey, you have elements of yourself embodied into the body. So at a child, you might come in, there might be a perceived idea of maybe a walk-in at certain points when there are levels of despair. So when we're going through the trauma, say Lyme disease, and working through the emotions and the physical body, or whether it's sort of relationships, or whether it's however it shows itself to be, you're in readiment of the seeing of the density within yourself to enable you to download the greater aspect of who you are, which is what we might perceive to be a walking. Now, the information what I was getting forward was that it's absolutely at these key points of planets and the cosmic alignment of the regimen of boom, in comes this big upsurge of energy that ignites within us a surge of energy that allows us to start to switch on and to remember. Now, remember, this is all about remembrance. It's the ascension into oneness that we are working through. So when we embody into ourselves this beautiful upsurge, a tsunami of energy that's of a higher level of consciousness, it enables that then switching on ignition for us to do our inner trauma work, or shadow self. So the light starts to shine upon the density that we're holding within our physical bodies, within our environment, within our relationships, etc. And then we then start to deconstruct. And with the deconstruction, this is when we start to then question, to find out information, to move forward, because we have this soul alignment into the wanting to understand, and that's our classic sort of upsurge. But the information, if we look at it from a high perspective, is actually that there is this download upsurge into those that signed up for the journey. So you and I and others that are listening, that we signed up for it, that at these pivotal points of this node within our linear timeline, we get a download. We get a download to shine the light upon our shadow, so we see that we are not. And I think this is really very interesting, is that we see which we are not, so that we can see that what we are, so that we can remember who we are. So we align to another blueprint of experience, not the distorted field, but the absolute field, which is heaven on earth. So we're moving from the distorted field, the illusionary field, and we know all about that, don't we?
Yeah.
Into the absolute reality of this world. It should be pure heaven on earth, pure heaven on earth. So our original template of being was signing up to come here to experience heaven on earth. But we've got to work through all of our karma, all of that backpack information that we've stored within our physical body, our DNA structure from ancestral lines, past life now moments within the quantum field, so that then we can then start igniting. And with the weight and the amplification of our availability to really bring in that beautiful energy and use our physical body as a conduit, just like our beautiful trees do it for us also, is that then we can then, as we come into union with heart, so us connecting here today, allows us to create almost like a webbing across the world. So whether we're actually speaking on this call today and we never speak again, or if we continue to speak, the connection of hearts is the main thing that creates a grid work system across the world. And this is why we're so wanting to come into, getting back into soul group families, collaborations, so that we join our heart spaces. Now, energetically, that's going to create this wonderful big upsurge of connections across the whole of the earth. And with the information that was coming through just before this call was that as I heal myself, just like the Ho'oponopono,
Yeah, yeah.
um, yeah, that as I heal myself and we are connected heart to heart, you also heal because I am you. And this is where the upsurge of not having overly masses of souls that hold that template will shift the consciousness by injecting and infiltrating the darkness with light. The deconstruction was the darkness infiltrating light. Now we are infiltrating the dark with our light. So this is what's happening, is that we're bringing in higher levels of consciousness for the collective to pick up on. And that's a beautiful thing, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's I assume like a lighthouse emits light into the sea in terms of
Yeah.
our energetic vibration emanating into the higher realms. I do Akashic record readings, and I know um, that through the readings itself, obviously you don't know the person, and just as if you don't know people who you're channeling or are getting information for, it's interesting how that information is passed through, and then you have that connection to a person, distance not being a factor. Um,
Mm,
you speak about template, the
mm,
template itself of the human body. We're born into this universe with a not a clean slate, so to speak, because we do have ancestral baggage. We have
mhm,
past life stuff, karma. At
mm.
what point does the darkness, so to speak, impede itself or overwhelm the heavenly body? And
Oh, okay. That's a lovely way of putting it. Okay. So the if we could imagine ourselves to being absolute everything that all that is, this is what we've really got to, from my perspective, really sort of honor, is that separation is us in individuality. Okay. So we are both light and dark. And the more that we can honor that we are all that is and neutralize duality, then we'll be able to supersede the darkness of which we hold, which is the distortion, to then anchor in the light. Meaning that the more that we see our shadow and not push it away, but honor it, the more that we can dissolve it, or not necessarily dissolve it to release it, as what I call data. So everything that we are experiencing upon this earth is an experience, and the experience holds energy. And if we sort of see that there is this source energy, however people want to see it, a library of what does it feel like to be Nicola in this body in this lifetime? Oh, let me see what combination could I bring together within her template, and then how does she interact with that? The level of experience needs to come in holding darkness, because I can't see that I am light unless I have dark,
right.
because I am pure light anyway. So the experience of duality needs to come in, and sometimes it's very difficult to hold. But the more that you can neutralize duality by, oh, it just is, not poo-pooing it or belittling anybody's trauma here. You know, we've all had our varying degrees of trauma that we've gone through, but it's to see the reality for what it is. It's an experience of the soul, of a soul growth, learning and experience through that process. So having darkness in our lives isn't nice to experience when you're in the emotional state of it, when you perceive it from a place of separation and you see it through the eyes of the sensations and the emotional state of mind. If you see everything from a higher level of perspective or level of consciousness, then you see it for what it is that it's a game that we are playing. Right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
you talk about that to somebody that's actually going through, somebody, just giving them a big old slap. At that time, you would be like, what are you on about? But if we look at it from a high level of consciousness, as we download the data, we'd be able to see that the game is being played out to basically reclaim all of the aspects of once you just dropped off when you descended. You're this whole beautiful light, you're descending through, you're going in separation, 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 darkness, more darkness you're holding in your experience. Ascension, building up, building up, building up, building up, building up into oneness. So what we do as we come in as a soul level of understanding, we're either coming in a descension or we are rising in an ascension. Now, some souls upon the planet are descending. They're going into darkness, they're going into emotional states. They may not be reincarnating on the planet because the planet is ascending. The vibration of which the match is to is moving on up. So the incarnation for those souls have chosen to descend. And to ascend, we have to come from the descension.
Right.
So honoring where we've come from is that, yes, we played the part of this particular perpetrator, this warrior that, you know, did this and that. When we go and tap into our past lives, we can see that evidence of once which we were. There's the darkness. That's what you're releasing. You're releasing all that you were not, which is pure light. So when we start to really draw in the soul fragmentation of the interactions with others and the healing of, I'm going to play the part of the murderer this time round and you're going to be the victim. You know, these karmic relationships are there to assist each of us in separation, the soul connection, to align to what does it feel like to go into density, into this reality of this distorted field. And this is where we really need to understand that it's not about judgment of duality at all. Everybody plays their part, but if you look at it from that high perspective, you can see it's a game. If you're in it and you're judging it from that emotional place, you're not going to see that it's a game. You're going to be the victim. You're going to be the person that holds that truth of that place of duality that you're experiencing that others are doing to you. It's not. It's a reflection of who you are,
Right.
that you're seeing within yourself, that you're able to align to come up into oneness yet again. So you've got to claim back. You've got to see who you are. You've got to look through your shadow. You've got to really honor your emotional states. You step into heart. You start to download high levels of consciousness. You tap into celestial beingness. You tap into the elements of the earth. You tap into the trees, the animals. You tap into individuals. All of this awakening is beautiful. This spiritual journey is actually the reconnection. And that's what we're moving into. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
That you asked, because I just went off a bit, but
No, that's
came back
okay.
around again.
In terms of a person who has so much darkness that they want to take their lives, so to speak.
Mhm.
In this case, what would be the difference between the person who is suffering so deeply and is in this position and actually goes through the action as opposed to somebody who does not? They're facing a complete darkness. How come they did not receive this upload of information to push themselves through, whereas
Mm,
somebody else did?
mm. So everybody has it's almost like this. So this is what's presented, and through my experience of, you know, sort of working with lots of people through my through the years, is that my higher self gives it to me very, very simply. So the simpler the better for Nicola. Okay. And what they give me is the experience of what they call like a little tick box exercise, a checklist. So if the soul has decided to experience this, and this within their linear timeline, then they'll reach a node of an out. Now, a node of an out can come in, but depending on where that soul is sitting, as we shift along the journey, you might then experience through that process of having your outers have going through suicide. Now, I experienced that absolutely myself with my daughter, that I was connecting to her energy, and she was going through an awful lot of trauma at the time. She was about 13, 14, and I was doing some housework at home, and my high self came in and said, Grace has committed suicide. And I was like, oh my God. And I pulled cards on it, and I was like, I started to cry. I started to, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Then I phoned some friends of hers and I said, what's happening? Have you heard from Grace? Because I couldn't get in contact with her. And I was like, oh my God, what's happening? As I was tapping into that timeline of her energy, what was coming through is that she committed suicide on that timeline. As I adjusted my energy into that greater knowing, I tapped into the understanding of that timeline that she did actually go ahead with it at a soul level of understanding she did. But as I then actually connected in, she was still alive. Now, you may
Wow.
think of that as being a little bit crazy to actually sort of talk about that. And please forgive me if anyone's going through that trauma of experiencing of this. But within another timeline, she did. Within another timeline, she didn't. And this is what's happening an awful lot as the deconstruction of the dimensions are coming in, is that people are actually seeing that things are coming in which weren't there, but then is. So we're looking at a completely different thing here. We're looking at the quantum field, and depending on the timeline that you're sitting at to what you're actually aligning to through the experience, then their soul might have actually had an out where they did commit suicide. There may be a time that you're on that timeline where you experience where they committed suicide, but the out may be given in different increments of the journey, with depending on the level of consciousness of which the soul is aligning to. So it's far greater than just sort of looking at it from a one singular timeline trajectory. There are multitudes of timelines that we can tap into, as well as sort of ancestral lines, as this, as that, all this sort of information that we can download. Is that, yes, at that time where I felt really very suicidal in my life in 2012, is that maybe I did, but my experience of it took me to another. Do you know that film Sliding Doors?
No, I don't. No.
Okay, there's a like, so whatever needs to happen will take you to the path of where you need to be, that you play out, but there'll be certain aspects of yourself that will drop off. So there will be an aspect of myself still with my ex, but I'm not tapping into that level of consciousness because I'm aligning to this timeline. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
So
I wanted to ask you the alignment in terms of how are you not aligning in terms of thinking about it and not allowing the conscious mind to.
vibration,
Okay. All right.
yeah. So if we're in a vibration of a lower vibration, then the timeline we're experiencing will bring us all of those synchronicities from the universe that we align to those lower experiences, which is more traumatic experiences, all of these sort of, trauma. As you shift in your vibration, you then upgrade into higher levels of consciousness, which then align you to all of these new experiences. So this is the shift from 3D reality moving through the fourth, which is more of a bridging, gathering what it is that you want and what you don't want, the deconstruction, into the fifth dimensional energetic field, which is then tapping into higher levels of consciousness and start seeing far beyond the veil.
Yeah.
So as we raise in our vibration, we can access from a sensory perception, remember, not from just not just it's just but a more of an esoteric understanding. As we shift our energy, then we can then start to connect into that high level consciousness, which is the heaven on earth template. But we leave behind others in the same game simulation,
Right.
but from their timeline, from their vibration, they're only picking up on this. But we can pick up on all of this and below, so we see everything below us and how they're playing their game with their vibration. So this is where we come into observation, that if we're running at a higher frequency of light, then we can see everything below ourselves, which is the witnessing of the experience rather than diving into the trauma of it. But we can choose to dip and flow
Yeah.
through the,
What's interesting is it's interesting is how relationships sometimes falter based upon the shift in energy from one person to the next. In terms of 2012 or times when a person is going through an awakening process, their energy goes out off the charts in terms of where they were. and so they no
Mm.
longer resonate with the person they're with. The
Yeah.
problem, the problem I find is that when I personally go to a higher level of consciousness, that it's harder for me to relate to the lower energy and earthly existence, which creates a shift in or a disharmony in a relationship, because you see things from a higher perspective and yet you're living an earthly existence, knowing that what you're doing is almost floating above stuff that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And I personally try to remain grounded, but it's very difficult to ground when you resonate with things that you personally displaced on the outside world that come back to you. But then again, as you say, it's a lesson to enhance your soul, because
Yeah.
it's bringing darkness into your consciousness.
Yeah. I
So
think the thing is also is that if we look at it as a practice, everything is a practice to enable us to go into mastery. So
yeah,
as we master the chaos around us, we can observe it without judgment.
but you're a master of surrender, it appears, uh,
Yes.
because yeah, you're
Yeah.
absolutely a master of surrender, because there's times where my ego will get in the way, and as using
Mm,
myself as an example, or a person's ego will get in the way, so to speak, and they can't hear the information that is obviously coming through, which
mm,
brings me to your gift, your workhorse, the beam of light that comes through you, which is so fascinating,
mm.
which is your light work, your light codes, and the
Yeah.
information light language that you express the information that you receive,
Mm,
which is so fascinating to me, because I've interviewed people who channel, and many of them I ask, and I'll ask you yourself, uh, what is the exact process? How did this take place? Like, in terms of, how did you first receive the information and then say, what is this? I mean, you mentioned a little earlier, but how did you not shut it off and say, it's foreign to me? How were you open to
yeah.
it?
So it was an absolute knowing that what came through was so beautifully presented by my higher self that it was me basically moving through my ego so that I could then really tap into all that I am with the codes. And okay, so can I bring forward some codes so that I can then get some higher sort of way of
Yes,
expressing it?
maybe
Yeah.
you could just let me just express it to the audience, or you can express what happens, and then
Okay. Yeah. So basically what happens is that the body itself is a conduit, like a tube, basically. So we've got like we've got this, we've got the hands, the feet, and all the bits and pieces of the body, but energetically we have this sort of central column of light which is sort of running through here. Then we've got this expansion of energy that starts to widen out, which is the sort of moving into the sort of auric field, but it almost sort of feels like you're in a tube. As you're grounding your energy through, so we're really embodying, so we're being in the body, we're drawing down, hooking down higher levels of consciousness. The high levels of consciousness doesn't hold a language which is linear, meaning it's not a learnt language. It is a transmission of energy that is expressed through the body that comes out in many different ways of expression. So it might come in through like Reiki, where it comes in, moves out of the hands as you write into the energy field, just like, say, maybe a shock array on Reiki.
right.
Yeah. Or it might be expressed through toning or a language, a dialect, physical body movement. It might be expressed through art, all different sort of ways. The face might start twitching, toes go, physical body can go off, start twitching. The body comes in alignment to the expression of the light. So the light that comes in is holding a high level of consciousness. The interpretation of the light is expressed through physicality. Okay. So the embodied individual, so Nicola, expresses the light that is running through me as a pure channel to enable the expression of high levels of consciousness to come forward to either release dense energy that is in somebody's energetic field, to realign them to high levels of consciousness to activate, or to ignite a remembrance, which is sort of the subconscious understanding for the soul to remember within them. And this is where I go into the interpretation. When I, if I'm working on a mentorship, that I would go in and codes would come in, but then I work through an interpretation. So basically what happens is that I allow myself to connect up, and it's just been a journey of knowing how to do this.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
as you sort of move into setting those intentions, and intentions are really very important because we want to work with the light. So we move into the intention to receive information, data. Can you see I'm getting some information coming down into third eye? And I pull the information down into, and the eyes start to flutter. So I'm allowing the body to receive data, which is holding a higher frequency of light. So Nicola is sort of stepping aside, which is from the ego mind structure. And then I'm allowing high levels of consciousness to flow through me. And this is where then the codes start to come in. So the hands are starting to go as I let go of my body. And then as then the codes are coming in another dimension, if I'm closing my eyes, I can switch off this reality from a sensory perception and move into another state of being, into another dimensional field, whether it's through all time and space. So I can move up through dimensions and frequency bandwidths, and then you then blend with the person that you're connecting with, or the person receiving the codes can then download through from me the data so that they can upgrade their system. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Very
absolutely.
complicated sounding.
Beautiful.
We might have to listen to that again. You
It's
might do that on replay.
no, it's beautiful.
But
It's beautiful. So I'm sorry. Go ahead. Let's see.
yeah, si macchiata. So the vibration of the dialect that comes through when it's coming through voice is dependent on the frequency of consciousness that is being downloaded. So if we have, say, Arcturian or Pleiadian or Lyran or any Galactic, or you might have dragon energy if we're looking at elementals, if we're looking at vibrations of the earth, they all have a frequency, and within that they have a sound. The way it's expressed through the voice is held at that frequency, and it is heard through the perception of the ear of the beholder. So it comes in through your ears, and then you align to that energy, and then you receive the codes by listening to the codes, or allowing yourself to connect with my heart, so that then the transference of the conscious connection can then run through their energetic field. So if I'm going to bring some codes in now, so what is relevant codes for this now moment, I'm just going to sort of see what we can bring forward. That mama syokyata. So we draw in the breath almost like a syringe. So we're bringing in and igniting the heart space, allowing the energy to flow right down to my little tootsie toes. So I'm really embodying the energy that is moving through me, allowing the body to shift, because the body knows if there's anything that is held within the joints, within the deep cellular structure, that needs to be let go of, which then is sent up to the universe to be transmuted into positive energy. So any data that needs to leave me rather than me storing onto it, I allow it to go up and away from myself, but then I bring and draw down light codes to ignite within me high levels of consciousness and understanding, thinking that masukya lokia o tu o suma kai washakia o subakia on to visuk an karatati subakia nata asha sugtun lokosh en e kwashana kiata da isiamakiata the disukut krepakia an kalusuktu sha lakai du jisitba an kaisi suktuka alakia tuku shamakiata na akiata ta. So it is the movement of the energy that comes down and aligns to the central column of light to enable the soul to align to that frequency. So the remembrance of the soul's journey will come in as you receive the codes. Now, if somebody listens to the codes and go like, what is that? Is because you are not ready to receive the codes. If you're not ready to receive the codes, the mind will come in, kick in and judge the codes. But the data, the information is still held within the physical vessel. When you're allowed in yourself to align to it, you'll activate within inside of yourself that when a code comes in, but it is judged, it is stored within the system, so it ignites when you're ready, a soul level of understanding. So it makes me laugh when somebody judges it and puts up a little comment of like, oh, that sounds a bit weird. I'm like, good. I'm so glad you're saying that, because actually you receive my codes. Boom. I've done my job. So they're not ready necessarily to actually listen to it, but the data that they're holding within the system has brought you into the synchronicity to enable you to hear the codes in the first place. So actually, if you're not too sure what light language is about, you're actually here for a reason, okay? To receive the codes. When you're really conscious of downloading the codes and working with people to ignite them, when you're really receiving consciously the codes, there is a massive amplification. If you're just listening to the codes just for listening's sake, then it's going to go into your subconscious backpack. But if you're really downloading the codes with me, if you're listening to a transmission, if you're bringing in your own codes, which is the ultimate empowerment status, there is like, you really align to high levels of consciousness at a quickened pace. It's a
What is,
quickening.
yeah, what does a person experience in terms of receiving the light codes?
Yeah, so sometimes experience of codes, you might get an emotional response because you're going straight into the data where it's dense. So you'll get this ignition, you just can't stop crying. Sometimes you might get physical body shakes where the physical body is literally just sort of like releasing the data, the density within the physical body, in the joints, in the muscles, within the blood, within the breath. Sometimes there's just like this switching off where you literally just come offline basically, and you go into like a deep meditative state, and it takes I did that with a friend of mine's mum, and she took about half an hour coming back online because she was taken offline. So you get many different sort of like responses, but if somebody's not receiving anything, sometimes it might be that the codes aren't meant for you in that now moment, or maybe they're not relevant to you. It doesn't mean to say that the codes aren't any good. It just means to say that your soul's not really aligning to that data. So light codes are so powerful, and more people are igniting the remembrance of the expression of their light, which is actually a precursor to telepathy.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you two questions, and I guess
Yeah.
I'll incorporate them together in some way when you can answer them separately afterwards. So, first of all, I wanted to know what the difference between the light code is and the light language,
Hmm.
and also when you're receiving this information, this light information, is it Arcturian? Is it a serious? Can you differ? Not to label it. In other words, I guess once you label it, then you take away from the essence of the energy itself.
Yeah.
But in terms of since you do mention the different galactic entities that are capable of imparting upon the session or channeling,
Mm-hmm.
are you able to differentiate between the different energies and where they come from?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the more that you're aligned to understanding that you are all that is, right, you can then align to the understanding that you are a multidimensional being. Okay. So with the light language, the language is the dialect that's coming forward. The code itself is the codex, which holds data, which is the information. So within a single dialect, sentence could be like an encyclopedia's worth of information. It's like condensed data. Okay. If you're sort of aligning to a multi-dimensional aspect that you can download and embody, then you're accessing you throughout all time and space. So I guide people into the understanding of, rather than actually calling in Arcturian, is to actually align to Arcturian, that is you. And then you are then pure channeling yourself. Because we need to realize that we are all that we are. And if you give your power away to an Arcturian, I would question, what is the Arcturian coming in from an outward source into your field? I would look at, because there is duality upon this earth, in this universe. So the more that you can integrate within your system the ignition of the dialect that you hold, then you know that you're accessing through your heart space. So the dialect that I brought forward there was very much of a mix, actually. And what happens is the mixes of vibration can also occur. So it's not pure Pleiadian, it's not pure Syrian. There is a mix and a blending of it. And what happens is because the light codes are coming through with the hands, which might be one aspect, there's also a dialect that will hold a frequency also. So you get multi-dimensional light language integrations that will come in the more that you've aligned to higher levels of consciousness within an embodied state of a perceived idea of identification of a multi-dimensional aspect that you are. Yeah. So it's basically, if I align to my Arcturian, I align to the being that is running on the same frequency that is me as an Arcturian. Right, this might be a bit mind-blowing, but I see myself when I'm working with Arcturian as I work into the template, working on a galactic ship. This is where you might go like, what is she talking about? But I actually align to the being and I get the download of the information that is adjusting the template within this field. It's really very surreal when you get into the world of Nicola. So as I go into the dimensions, I see myself working as an Arcturian and then downloading the information. And different levels of consciousness that is me, but then I embody, I download the availability for me to tap into it instantly, rather than calling upon anything. Whatever is needed will just align. So I don't call on anything outside of myself. I say, okay, what is needed, and it downloads through me. So rather than having to download this, download that, I invite this one in, I invite this one in, I invite this. No, I will receive what is needed, and there the codes come in. Then I unpack it afterwards, what actually went on there, what went on, and get some guidance through that process if I'm working with anybody. Does that make sense? I hope that answered all your
Absolutely.
questions.
Is your frequency in line with any specific galactic family itself?
Mhm.
Maybe you could.
Yes, I have several that are my absolute favorites, actually. I love the Arcturians. They bring me so many gifts along the way. I've worked with Arcturian children, actually, with some channeling, which they were quite funny to work with and blend with. So that was part of my galactic family heritage. Which was very, very beautiful. And they are quite sort of comical beings, but serious at the same time. That they don't hold much humor. The Arcturians are very serious and data-based information that comes through them. But my most favorite and the most profound experience of integration, that of the mantis being. So it's an insectoid race, which many people would probably be a little bit scared of, because when I had that presentation of my mantis turn up, the vibration of the mantis is very, very, shall we say, stern, but it is a being that holds such love for humanity. Yes, there may be some duality within it, but my mantis being is so protective. And if I get any dark work to do, my mantis is in, boom, like that. So my mantis, when I integrated that, was during a meditation. And when he aligned to my energy, so it sort of comes in from my right and then aligns and then flows and starts to download. When he came in to download, honestly, Adam, it was just the craziest experience. It was like he was going, "Ooh, you're a bit small," and so we had to squeeze him in.
Wow.
So that experience did actually, that was probably one of the most memorable integrations, because their energetic field needs to really sort of come down right down to your feet, so that they can work with your physical body. So
Yeah.
when we pure channel, I let go of Nicola, and then they work through me. So they become the driver of this vehicle, and that's so to integrate a multidimensionality aspect is that they become the vehicle driver. And so I help a lot of people that that are upgrading into multidimensional aspects. Also, what happens is what I find with really high vibrational healers is that there's an aspect trying to get in that is perceived to be outside of the self, but there may be something within that multidimensional aspect that needs to be healed. So I heal the multidimensional aspect and then align them, integrate it into my system, and then I pass the multidimensional aspect back to the individual that is receiving their aspect, so that they can then download that level of consciousness. So that's part of my work that I do. So I heal multidimensional aspects that might have a soul fragmentation. So that goes into another subject itself. But it's the experience of downloads to these multidimensional aspects when you do start to ignite the light codes, that becomes a little bit crazy for the mind to receive. But once you're used to it, it's just everyday stuff.
Yeah,
Like
I see
physics now.
that. Uh, you know, you speak about healing work. I know you do healing work,
Mm,
intuitive healing. You have classes. I do distance Reiki. Some of the drawbacks are the transmutation of the energies that we pick up from people's energy fields.
yeah.
Uh, that I think I heard you in another interview speak about the based upon the level of our darkness and light and the ability for us to transmute our own darkness and opening up a channel for us to then take in the energy from someone else and then clear it out, if I have that correctly.
Mm,
Um, maybe you could elaborate on that and how that's done and how you do it, or how you recommend people who do energy work to do that.
okay. Yeah. So it's not for everyone. It's not for the faint-hearted. If you're not, if but in saying that though, it's a matter of perception. So at the very beginning of my journey, when I started doing that, I would purposely connect to, say, maybe an antique wardrobe. Right, listen to this. There was a wardrobe that was in the bedroom at my old family home, and I looked at it and I was like, oh my God, that's holding so much dense energy, starting to get to know a little bit of energy. So we're going slightly off, but I'll get back to the subject. Tap into the energy of it. Right, okay, I'm going to draw upon the energy and I'm going to draw it in, feel it, so an empathic response of it. So I'm tapping into wardrobe, so wood, tapping into it, and then allowing it through transmutation of my heart space, basically giving it a big old hug, then enabled me to basically dissolve the dense energy that was running through my field with my breath. And I just intuitively sort of did these little self practices of what would happen if I then took on an entity from somebody. Sometimes it was very subconsciously done, and then I had to work through the process. But if you take energy in from someone else that is you, remember, you're taking the energy in, but where does it go? When you know how to transmute your own negative energy, then when you bring in something from somebody else, it's easy because you've already done it for yourself.
Right.
Yeah. So if you're a healer of others, you are a healer of others because you're a healer of yourself, right? If you're a healer of yourself, then you know your practice. If you look at yourself and you label yourself a healer, it's not necessarily that you're a healer of the others. So I'm backtracking here. What you are is you're a healer of yourself, but you're showing everybody how you've done it,
That's
which is the
excellent.
same thing as transmutation of negative energy. So if you can transmute negative energy for yourself, boom, go and do it for others then. Because then you'll use the same template, the same tools, the breath, the grounding, the movement of the energy, the adjustment of the print tube, however you would transmute the negative energy through your own field. There you go. There's the system to release it in others. So I think the misconception that I had in the very beginning with a healer is that I thought that I did it for everybody else, but it's not. What we're doing is we're empowering, and I think this is happening more and more and more, is that we're aware of, is that we're empowering others to do their own healing. This is really important that we need to shift into. It's not that somebody sets up a call for me so that I can bring them codes. No. Let me show you how I do it. Let me show you how I use my breath. Let me show you how I move my physical body. Let me show you how I have done it. If that aligns to how you do it, brilliant.
Absolutely.
I'm just showing you how I've done it. If it resonates, then it quickens the process. If it doesn't resonate, then don't judge me for the way that I do it. Find your way of doing it. So empowerment is key here. As a healer, you're a healer of you first, and then you guide through people through to heal themselves. So that journey is has been, you know, sort of throughout the years that I've realized, oh yes, I heal myself, don't I? And that's the only person that I need to heal.
That's true, because you're faced with people who resonate with the same issues in some
Yeah,
capacity as you graduate each level of healing. And
yeah,
it's true because the universe sends you people who are in line with your own energy field. You're working on yourself when you see the same, you're displaced back and forth, a mirror image of their problems and their issues.
yeah,
Uh, so when we learn from the experience, then we move forward to have another person with other issues that will then teach us more about ourselves and test us to overcome those issues that they themselves are suffering from. And that's so fast.
exactly.
That's such a, yeah, that's a fascinating thing, because I realize that people, when I do readings for as well, resonate at the level that I'm at, or initially were at. They were, when I started, it was a sense of fear. So they were coming with fear-based questions or
Mm-hmm.
fear-based personalities or paranoias about things. And then it gradually shifted to other things. So in helping others, we're really helping ourselves as well,
Yeah,
basically. Yeah.
absolutely. That's
Yeah.
what I was talking about, the timeline
Yes.
shifting. Yeah, so you get like the alignment of others when you was you know, sort of more of a, and you know, sort of in the soup of it all. There you're aligning, and then as you rise up, you're aligning to your new tribe members because your reality is shifting into different frequencies of light, you know. So you know, we're in good company then, aren't we, you know, sort of connecting here today. And for
Yes.
anybody aligning to this call today, you know, it's you know, we're coming in with a sense of resonance of understanding each other. Whether it, you know, we can use our own discernment, of course, you know, to whether it really sits with you, but whatever it does or doesn't, you know, we just witness from my perspective of truth and your perspective of truth what resonates with you or not. But as we blend and we create this beautiful web, as I spoke about in the beginning, then we then start to align and allow ourselves to reconnect with who we are, which then shifts the whole planet of any density that's held within the system.
Yeah.
Shift the old collective, you know.
Yes, I agree. I agree.
Yeah.
You've had near-death experience when you were 4. At what point, if you can recall, did you recall that particular incident? In other words, I've interviewed people who've had near-death experiences in there when they were 4 and 5, and they had one later on in life, or a trauma that evoked the same feelings as the
Mhm.
4 or 5-year-old experience. And many people were in contact with spiritual guides, masters at that age that they recalled in their second NDE or trauma, or galactic forces, so to speak, alien
Mhm.
beings that came in contact. Did you have any recall on any of that?
Yeah, so the first one was when I was about 4 or 5, as you just said, which was when I was playing on a beach and I drowned. So and I remember that experience when I was, you know, sort of, you know, around about that sort of time, about 6 or 7, and my mum used to sort of speak about it, and you know, because I used to have a real big fear of water as a result of it, believe you not. But yeah, I did. And so that always sort of, you know, throughout all of my life, always was sort of playing on my mind that, you know, the fear of water. I mean, I'm a Cancerian. You would have think that I'd be diving in and out of the sea, you know, being a water sign. But water always was an issue for me, especially sort of like dipping underwater if I was going, you know, at the beach or something, you know, literally sort of going underwater would be quite traumatic. So throughout all of my life, with when I was going for a swim, or not really wanting to take a bath, I'd prefer to take a shower, because you're standing up and you're more sort of, even so the remembrance of it was always with me throughout my time. But with the 2012 sort of awakening and the big upsurge, it really sort of like took me back into, sort of like tapping into those past experiences that makes me me, which is the stories that make me me. And then I, because of the experiences of tapping into other dimensions, and presentations of images and light code downloads, and the experiences of, the pure presence of beings around me, I started to question into the NDE about how was that then, in that now moment, how what happened there. So the question starts to come in, doesn't it? And we all do it, so how does that work then, and what's this and what's that? And the understanding of it is that the connection to my galactic beingness came in at that point, that then triggered these deep dark awarenesses of really being scared of the dark, and all those traumas of the past alignment of remembrance came in. So there was there's a bit sort of to and froing within my consciousness of understanding how did that then align to my awakening here, to how I am now. But it was all part of the plan and the process of how my soul came in increments of an upgraded version of me. So so I'm not really answering the question to the fullest, but you just almost sort of like feel that you're in and out of the past and future to align you to the past and the now, to align you to your new timeline trajectory. Because what we're doing is the remembrance, remember, it's the amnesia, it's pushing through the amnesia, what actually did happen there. And gradually they're starting to align me to really sort of start to speak about it, start to really take ownership of it, I suppose, identify with it, that it was part of my journey, that there was that moment of that. And in the past, I've had past life regressions of going into deep meditation and seeing a common denominator of death through drowning,
Yeah.
and then aligning to bringing in the soul fragmentation as a result of the trauma of the death, which is another subject in itself. And I'm just getting a little bit of information coming in now. I feel that I need to go and meditate on, but it's the it's the trauma of the experience of the passing out of the physical body that creates the death sequence that needs to be aligned to. So through the process of the near-death experience, but not having an out at that point, allowed me to then see how this whole structure works out and is, and how it is. Do you see what I mean? So I'm going a little bit like, oof, my ego's starting to kick in now, but it feels like it's just another clue to how does this reality actually work, because we question. I'm going to leave it there because my ego is kicking in.
Yeah, because you had to be out of it in order to see it and then come back into it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you had any physical contact with any alien beings in terms of visitations or sightings that have come into your field?
I haven't had physical. I've had elements of physicality, of breaking down of the matrix, just like the shoulder coming in and out. When I've had on several occasions, if I've done an open-eye transmission on my YouTube channel, I go in, and as I really stare into my eyes, I break down the matrix. So I experienced that. But I also have experienced the understanding of the presence of energy of beings around me. So it's more of a clairsentient sort of feeling of them being around. I've aligned to literally see dark shadows, people, which are really, really dense energies, but you just shine light on them. That was at the beginning of my journey. They were really sort of quite dark entities, but they're like really dark shadows and puts you in big, big, deep fear. I've had experiences of being in galactic wars where I've had entities actually hooked into my system that have told me to go kill myself and my children. That was an experience in itself, which was wonderful. That actually helped me transmute negative energy through my field, but I wouldn't recommend that to everybody. And I literally saw an overlay of a reptilian upon my face at that point, which was horrid. And my eyes actually went slitted with the pupils. That was quite horrific. That put me into big fear. Honestly, I thought I was going crazy at that point. Put me in a loony bin. I've had visions of entities come in when I've closed my eyes. So I get projections of beings come in, facial expressions, sort of suggestions of faces, especially sort of Arcturian faces. And I had this, and I've spoke about this on my channel. I had this wonderful experience, and it was open-eyed, where, on several occasions, where I had this. So I was sort of laying in bed, and I had this sort of big template of it, almost looked like an old-fashioned photograph, and it came across like this up in the room, like this. And then it showed itself, and it was a reptilian wearing a suit and a tie.
Wow, wow, wow.
And I said, "Oh, hello," and then I said, "Who are you?" And they said, "Oh, this is you." And I was like, "Okay, right, thank you very much." But it was this sort of like reptilian, so went like this. He went.
Wow, wow.
So
That's
I've had
so
these
interesting.
visions, but I
Yeah,
haven't had a physical, you
yeah,
know, it's more esoteric connections through in different dimensions, and lots of different visuals, masses of visuals,
right.
which are beautiful, sort of light cities, physical golden light codes go like across your face, and then you think, I didn't catch that. They're like, you don't need to catch it, it's just downloaded. It's like that.
Yeah, you
Um,
you don't need to actually physically see it. You already are energetically in touch with it, so
yeah,
it's at a deeper
yeah,
level. It's interesting.
yeah, yeah. So I haven't physically, but esoterically definitely, and I have physically seen um, imagery,
Yeah,
suggestions of. I think they do it to keep it a bit light so that you don't go into too much fear. But I have experienced the denser ones, which were really, really very difficult to hold, especially in the beginning of the journey when you think you are going insane.
right, right,
But
right.
now it's part of what I do.
You're
I
you're
enjoy it actually.
a veteran.
Yeah, yeah.
If somebody would like to reach out to you in terms of having a healing session or do intuitive work or connect to their galactic roots, where could they reach you?
Yeah, so I've got a YouTube channel myself, which is called Nicola Light. Nice and easy. I should have actually put that on my screen there, but Nicola Light. So there's lots of free content on there, and that would send you with the descriptions below my website, which is nicolalight.com. Nice and easy, where I do light language one-to-one sessions, work through your energy field, and mentoring. So if anyone's ignited their light language, I'm your girl. So I've got lots of information there for you. And also I have a Udemy course that there's a referral link on my YouTube channel that will take you through to activation and understanding light language, which has helped so many people. And that's that's real cheap stuff on there. It's it's on a sale price, so I wanted it. My high self said no, put it on there so that more people can access the information. But that will sort of get you understanding what light language is all about. Even if you haven't ignited it, there are some codes on there that will help your understanding why your codes aren't coming online yet. So the understanding of what is blocking the codes from coming forward, I talk about that in that course as well. Yeah, so it's nicolalight.com and Nicola Light on YouTube.
Absolutely. And if you'd like to like leave a specific message or something to the audience in terms as it relates to something from your personal experience and
Okay.
how you can enhance.
Hmm. I think the main thing that really sort of comes forward is just to remember that you're not your mind and you're not your body. And the identification of who you think you are is what you think you are. Feel who you are. That's the most important thing that I feel. And allow the body to do what it's got to do. And it might feel a little bit strange when the body starts to come online, because you get these sort of like almost Tourette's type of experiences come in, where the neck starts to, release energy at the back of the neck, which is a really massive sort of portal that sits on the back of the neck to allow that alignment to come in. But the most important thing I would say is, look at the holistic perspective of everything. Be open with your heart to receive any information. And if you're judging, ask, why is it that you're judging? Is there something that you need to clear to be open to receive this information if you've been brought into this presence of this video? Um, so I would just say, yeah, just literally just sort of feel into everything more than anything else, and let that body do its thing, because it knows exactly how to heal itself, whether it's physically moving the energy out, or whether it's honoring your emotions that might be layered on in front of you, all that distortion. Just let it work its way through. And then you can then download all these beautiful levels of consciousness. If you look at me from years ago to who I'm now, you would never have ever said that I was the same person. So if you're in that bit of an ebb, just know that you are working your way out into your light.
Excellent. Your words, your energy, and your experiences are inspiring, and the ability for you to access this information and pass it along through the light language, light codes is truly genius-like to me to see this, and I'm very fascinated with what you do. So
Thank you.
I want to thank you for joining me and being my guest here today, and also a fellow light worker that I feel.
Mhm.
Yep.
Mm, beautiful. Thank you so much.
Yeah. You're welcome.